a lot of reinvention and innovation is going to be required. And for the leaders and organizations that can be nimble and adapt, I think there's going to be a real opportunity to thrive through and on the other side of this. That's part of what happens in a crisis, right? It's kind of an accelerated cycle of disruption. So I think those are some of the things that leaders need to do. And I also think there's an opportunity to really kind of, leaders need to ask thoughtful questions. How can we as an organization emerge stronger through this? How can we as an organization learn through this challenge and be more resilient and be a better business on the other side of it? And I really do think this is a defining moment. It's the decisions you make and the action you take right now over these next 12 to 18 months that are really going to define your future opportunity for success.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? What does the future of leadership look like inside your company? Do you think about what leadership means and how you're leading in this next era of the new economy after COVID? We're still in the midst of dealing with the uncertainty of what's going to happen inside of our culture, our workplaces that are, work from home or combination, or how do we engage with each other? How do we shape the culture? We need to have leaders more now than ever. I got a chance to sit down with a buddy of mine, Ryan Estis, who is a really renowned speaker on the professional circuit. He's been doing this for over 10 years, talking with mid-market companies, enterprise level companies about leadership, mostly in sales leadership, but really leadership at its core. Today, we unpack this whole concept of what will leadership look like in this future? When you think about leadership, do you know exactly what you need to shift? What are the changes you need to make? Well, we go through 3 of those challenges specifically and deep today with Ryan Estis. If you haven't already accessed the training about taking your team to the next level, creating a team of A players, make sure you go to genehammett.com/training. You'll learn the 3 mistakes that keep you from creating the team that you want and scaling your business. All this comes from founders and CEOs of fast growth companies. Make sure you get that training now. It's absolutely free. genehammett.com/training. Now here's Ryan Estis. Ryan, how are you?
Great, Gene. It's good to see you. How are you today?
I am fantastic. You've been on the show before. We go back, friends, colleagues. You've advised me on some speaking topics that have really transformed the way my message gets out in the world. So I'm glad to have you here on the podcast.
Well, it's great to be back and to see all your success and reconnect, man. I'm excited for the conversation.
Well, when you think about this big question, I want you to really ponder this. We've been through some uncertainty through all this. There's still a lot going on after COVID, and schools are just now getting back into to full force, if you will. Some are virtual, some not. But what do you think are the most important aspects of leadership in today's new world?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and this is something I'm fond of saying, it's put people first. Performance and profitability will follow. So this is a time that is uncertain, and people are looking for leadership, for decisiveness and confidence in the future, and hope and strategy and tactics and personal and professional support. And so the job has changed, and when there's crisis and uncertainty, it can affect the psychological health, safety, and well-being of your people. And so right now, leaders need to take care of people. So put people first. Performance and profitability will follow. That's one thing. And then I think leaders need to we need to be adaptable, right? We have to be able to be flexible, adaptable. This is very disruptive. Business models are changing. So this is a time where I think a lot of reinvention and innovation is going to be required. And for the leaders and organizations that can be nimble and adapt, I think there's going to be a real opportunity to thrive through and on the other side of this. That's part of what happens in a crisis, right? It's kind of an accelerated cycle of disruption. So I think those are some of the things that leaders need to do. And I also think there's an opportunity to really leaders need to ask thoughtful questions. How can we as an organization emerge stronger through this? How can we as an organization learn through this challenge and be more resilient and be a better business on the other side of it? And I really do think this is a defining moment. It's the decisions you make and the action you take right now over these next 12 to 18 months that are really going to define your future opportunity for success.
Well, I don't think I would disagree with any of those. Let's break those down a little bit. I want to really give the audience something to go with. I just shared with you my research of fast growth companies. I've said this many times on the show. I've asked many leaders this. The impossible question is something that I came up with to help people understand, the leaders really, what's really important in today's world. And it goes something like this: as a leader of a fast growth company, what's more important, employees or customers? I know you have a specific, I'm getting tongue tied. You have a very specific thought on this because it relates that people first, but putting employees first, what does that mean in today's world?
Well, I think it means you get hyper obsessed about talent, that you do things to attract, engage, retain, and maximize the potential of your people. And I do think that's the priority, and it becomes first, because ultimately over a period of time, right, that becomes the sustainable advantage. As markets change and business changes and cycles evolve, really the inherent value worth of the company is embedded in its people. You could say, well, it's in the technology. Well, it's in the innovation. Where do those things come from? Critically, they come from the minds of people that are passionately engaged and committed to the cause of moving the business forward. So, and by the way, I want to say that and add that the two aren't mutually exclusive. More than one thing can be important to a business, right? So they're both hyper important. They're two areas of absolute obsession. But this idea that put people first, right? Become an incubator for A-level talent, unleash the absolute maximum potential and power of your people, get them closer to your best customers, build high value, high trust relationships. And those people will take the business places you could have never imagined was possible.
Now, Ryan just talked about A-level talent. Do you believe that you create A-level talent, or do you believe that you have to hire A-level talent and just develop them along the journey? Well, if you give up developing those B and C players, you'll probably never have the kind of business you want, because A players definitely want to be around other A players. They will leave if they're not really challenged and not supported in their roles. They get frustrated very easily. So you want to surround those A players with people that are emerging as other A players. And your job as a leader is to have the conversations and to be able to develop the leadership development structures and invest in those employees to take them to A players. Now, I've mentioned this training before, but if you want to make sure you get the training about how to develop A players, make sure you go to genehammett.com/training. Now back to Ryan. Here's a question that goes with that, Ryan. A lot of people want to hire the best, and that we all want to hire the best. We want to invest in the right people. But how do you, as a leader, engage people that maybe aren't the A-level players, but actually get them to rise and play the game at the higher level?
Well, look, I think ultimately that's the challenge, because we of course we all want to hire the best, but hiring is risky business, and most organizations don't always get that right. And I think poor hiring decisions, those are some of the biggest costs to a business. So the opportunity really is to move people up, right? And it's investment. It really is an investment in people. So, leadership development, right? That's a big one. There's you could link to this in the show notes. I wrote this ebook called Adapt and Thrive, and we've got the eight drivers of engagement that we talk about in our research. And a big part of what people want is they want confidence in leadership and confidence in the future success of the organization. And that's especially true right now. And a big part of that is communication, right? It's leaders investing in time and energy with their people. You do executive coaching. I do executive coaching also. And it's so interesting. You'll hear a lot of CEOs say things like, our people are our most important asset, or our people are our priority. And then you'll ask an executive, or whether it's a C-level leader or a mid-level manager, well, how much one-on-one time are you devoting on a day-to-day basis to spending time with your people? And invariably, there's a disconnect between what executives say, and oftentimes, and what they actually do. And you'll hear this: "Why I don't have time? I'm too busy." Actually, sorry, that time is the job. That's what being a leader is. It's spending time taking care of your people, investing in people, developing people, removing barriers for people, guiding people, coaching people, giving people feedback. That is, in essence, a major component of the job. And obviously, in this virtual world we're living in, there's some challenges inherent to doing that. But that's what's required. So it's investing the time.
I hear it all the time. They will
Yeah,
say
I'm not
one thing,
surprised.
and it will completely be when you really challenge them and you look at their calendar. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at a CEO's calendar.
Oh, that's yeah. Tell me what your priorities are. That's question number one. Question number two is, that's great. We go over it. These are your 8 priorities. People's always one of the top 1 or 2. Then it's hand me your calendar. Let's do the audit of the last 3 weeks. And where are the disconnects between what you said and what you do?
And that is really the telltale sign. So, actionable step, if you really want to audit yourself, go back and look at your calendar and see, specifically in the one-on-ones, because you mentioned leadership development this age. I want to ask you one more question before we go into adaptability.
Sure.
Leadership development is not an easy thing, but I think a lot of companies think that they're developing their employees by giving them those hard skills, right? They get a certification in some kind of technology, or they get something that will help them be more marketable, but they're not investing into leadership development the way they could be. They make excuses around that. What are your thoughts around this leadership development in today's world?
Soft skills are the hard skills, and we need to invest exponentially more resources into training and development. So people covet it, need it. It's mandated. The job's more challenging than it's ever been. More organizations get stalled and don't reach their full potential because of gaps in leadership. And what you said is absolutely true. But I do a lot of work with sales organizations, and I see it in sales all the time. We take the top couple performing reps in their territories, and because they're rock star sellers, we think they'll automatically be great sales managers. So we thrust them into that job with very little development or preparation. And those are 2 entirely different jobs. And that doesn't translate necessarily all that well without the support or development. That was my trajectory personally. I was a really good sales rep. I got pushed into a management job because of stellar performance, and flunked initially, failed miserably, and had to figure out, that really began my journey as a student of leadership and leadership development. What is it? What does it take? How do people respond, and understanding some of that psychology and human behavior to become a better coach and support people. So.
Now, hold on for a second. Did you hear what Ryan just said? Let's put a spotlight on this quote. The soft skills are hard skills. Now, what he really means by that is the hard skills of the world have traditionally been the technology skills, or the things that you can actually kind of see. Leadership is really hard to see. And you have to be there. You have to experience it. And you have to feel it. But the soft skills, like listening, communicating, and all the other things that go into the connection that we feel and the meaning that we have with each other, those are the hard skills of today. I would rephrase that a little bit and say soft skills are the money skills of the future. Because when we learn to work with data, or we learn to work with programming, or we learn to create interfaces, or we learn to smooth out the supply chain, whatever those things are, they're very important to the job. But how we communicate with others is even more important. How we engage with these workers, how we create the connection around this is essential to leadership. Don't lose sight of that. Back to the interview with Ryan. Well, I wish I had some numbers on that, because it's so true on how many people are talented at sales, but that get thrust into something and they end up failing miserably. And I appreciate you sharing your own journey there. Ryan, when you think about adaptability, was number 2 on your list in today's world of really improving leadership. How does a leader engage people to see why adaptability is so important, but more than that, how do we really create the kind of rituals that allow adaptability to be something natural within our organizations?
Right. I mean, first of all, it requires a mindset. So I think, you have to have this mindset that you're going to disrupt yourself before the competition or marketplace does it for you. And what I think that part of what that means is, in today's world, you really have to be simultaneously, you have to execute and perform given today's current, hyper disruptive reality, which is challenging in and of itself. But simultaneously, you also have to continue to have the discipline to iterate and innovate the business forward, right? To take intelligent risks, to make investments, to anticipate where our customer is going to be a year from now or 5 years from now. And so part of what I challenge, particularly in sales organizations, companies to consider is, and you take this moment in time, what did your customers, and we were just sort of talking about this before we started recording, what did our customers need pre-COVID, right? January, February, when things were firing and it was all systems go and this 10-year run up in the market, what did our customers need in value? How has that changed? What do they need in value right now in this moment? And then how is that going to inform what our customers are going to need in value from us 18 to 24 months? And based on those things, how are you iterating your business forward? So just from a pure practical standpoint, the way I think about this is I always need to be conducting 3 little experiments in my business. They're tests, right? And every experiment's not going to be a home run success. Some of them are going to fail miserably, right? But I'm testing, I'm iterating, I'm learning, I'm getting real-time feedback, a data set, intelligence, so I can continue to evolve my business forward in lockstep with what my customers are going to need into the future. And that's just good business. And the other thing is, from an adaptability perspective, you have to be close to your customers. I'm a big proponent of having a client advisory board. And having those kinds of relationships and conversations where customers will tell you where they need you to go or where they want you to go and into the future. And I think that can really help a business. You want to be innovating in lockstep with what your customers need the most. So those are some ideas, I think, in practical terms of the way leaders can think about it.
When you think about adaptability, I want to go back to that one-on-one question. One of the things that I ask leaders to do, and maybe you have a different approach to this, but one of the things that's been really profound in my business is saying, you spend 80, 90, sometimes 98% of the time talking about the work. When do you talk about how you work together? When do you talk about things like adaptability? And as a team or in a one-on-one conversation, they're not having those conversations very often. Do you see that in your world as well? Is there something's missing? They think it's all about the work?
Sure, it's the speed of business, right? I mean, most executives today are overscheduled and overwhelmed. And so there's a fatigue that's setting in. This pace that we're working is exhausting. I joke with executives about the double shift, right? And this was really in some ways a pre-pandemic joke, but it was, whatever your standard workday was, 7:30, 8 maybe to, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Then you take a break, a little bit of family time, then you go back for the second shift. I mean, the average, another question I love to ask executives to do the calendar audit, how many emails you get a day? And it's common for people to get 250 emails in a day. Our bandwidth. So what this idea of we're going to connect and we're going to check in and we're going to talk about, do a pulse check on where we are in terms of our adaptability. Some of that's a lost art, but again, let's go back to the time. I'm a fan. You talk about one-on-ones. What gets scheduled gets done. So, you should have one-on-ones scheduled every week in your calendar if you're managing a team, right? And that's the time where you have those conversations where you can ask questions like, hey, are you okay? How you doing through? No, I mean, like, hold on a minute. Are you really okay? We'll get to the work. Just let me know how you doing. How you feeling? And you go, is there anything you see that we should be doing differently right now? Like if you were me, what would you be thinking about? And you can have those real kind of authentic, deeper conversations where one, people feel supported and like they're contributing, and two, you're getting great feedback and ideas and maybe looking at your business from a vantage point that you don't see. Invaluable, but you have to make the time. And sometimes it's a choice. Do you want to do a coffee talk every morning at 7 a.m., 4 days a week with 4 of your people? Or do you not want to do that and show up in your office at 8:30 and start your day? Kind of leader you want to be. That's just a choice.
Yeah, very powerful. If you happen to be listening to this on YouTube, I want to break in here for a moment. I'd love for you to keep getting the content so that you can continue to evolve as a leader. We're putting a lot more emphasis on YouTube, so we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. This just means that you will get notified when messages come out. If you hit the thumbs up, the algorithm will be triggered so that we can show our content to others. This is a small ask if you enjoy this content to subscribe on other platforms so that we can connect and engage. Make sure you go right now into it. Now back to the interview with Ryan. We're going to wrap this up with the final point. You talked about this, ask more thoughtful questions. So let's define what a thoughtful question is. I know you gave an example, but let's define it first.
Yeah, I think a thoughtful question is one that engages somebody at their place of a higher need, let's say. So it's a deeper question. It's not a surface level question. My favorite example of this, my favorite example of how to elevate the quality of your question. First of all, ask open-ended questions, right? Don't assume, ask open-ended questions. And maybe the most important part about this is then listen. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Really listen. Master the art of active and perceptive listening. Leaders are listeners. And if you're really listening, you'll understand then how to ask follow-up questions, right? Tell me more about that. Well, that's interesting. Why do you feel that way? Wow, Gene, what gives rise to that position? Can you take that a level deeper for me? What are you seeing to give to, and you build on and really give people room. That's how you manage kind of an effective conversation. And it's the old Stephen Covey rule of communication. Seek first to understand, then be understood, right? But all of that starts with asking effective, open-ended questions that engage the heart and mind of the subject matter. And look, these are my opinions, but you're a master at this. So I think that's one of your great strengths is you ask really thoughtful questions. You prepare your questions in advance. And I think that's an example here. Notice you showed up prepared. You know me. You've been engaged in my work recently. You got prepared for today. So when we had our 20 or 30 minutes, you knew exactly what you were going to ask me. How many leaders show up to their one-on-ones with that same level of thought, discipline, commitment, and preparation? Take a page from the playbook today. Prepare a few questions in advance. You'll have more effective conversations.
I'll add to this because I want to make sure this is really sharp for those listening in. These thoughtful questions aren't complex questions. Sometimes they're very simple.
That's right.
Right? It's why is that the case? Or why would you believe that? Or what are you afraid of? Those questions are, what you're trying to do is not just push the work forward, but really connect with those people. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. I had no idea where you would take this big idea of where we're headed in this leadership development world. I think I've shared this with you before, but I wrote an article about 2 years ago through an interview that we did together. You basically said managers are a dying breed. So I titled it, put it on Inc. magazine. It's the #3 article across all of the things I've ever written. But and that's really cheating because the other 2 were like a combination of all these leadership books that I did reviews on. So it's a bunch of people. This is the #1 article where it's really about the core ideas about managers are a dying breed. We need these instead, which is leaders.
Yep, that's right. Look, leaders are the people that are committed to making the future happen. They have a compelling and inspiring vision of the future. They inspire people to join them on this journey. And that's the type of person that people want to follow. And I know that's true for me, and I think it's true for most people.
Well, Ryan, as always, your insights around where we are today and your ability to share something new and really engaging is always unparalleled. So thanks for being here.
Appreciate it, brother.
I just love having interviews with people like Ryan who are so excited about what they've got to say, and the research is well-founded and deep and insightful. when you think about your leadership, hopefully you've taken some notes on today's episode with Ryan, because I think what he talked about, putting people first, very important. Adaptability, absolutely essential. And asking better questions is a part of leadership. When you think about leadership and you think about growth, make sure you think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.